So thank you very much, everyone. This is going to be 20 minutes talking about our Safer Sleep risk assessment tool. For those who've been to Safeguarding Matters Live before, we've talked a bit about safer sleeping. And this is a tool that we've developed collaboratively with a group of representatives of lots of different agencies and some input from parents as well. And it's been developed basically for any practitioner from any agency across LLR to be able to support them in having safer sleep conversations with families. So if you, as part of your day-to-day work, come across families with under ones, then this is for you. And the learning that has fed into this tool's development has come from reviews that have been carried out both by the Child Death Overview Panel and also by Safeguarding Partnership reviews as well, where babies have sadly died and where safer sleeping guidance was not being followed. And we want to make it really clear that we can't prevent every baby death, sadly, but by being aware of the safer sleep guidance and talking with families about safer sleep practices, we can work with families to reduce risks and help every sleep for their baby to be a safer sleep. So it's really important that the information we give is consistent, and everything in this tool builds on and is consistent with all the information that the health visitors and midwives are giving to families, both before and after a baby is born. I just want to acknowledge the tool that was developed by Nottingham, which we've built on and expanded and made sort of tailored to our Leicester population and Leicestershire population in all of this, which has been used with our permission. Next slide, please.
It's not moving. I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Oh, sorry, it's got lots of clicks on this slide. I didn't think
then.
that's no, that's right. So the safest place for any baby to sleep, this is the bottom line. The safest place from evidence is that a baby should be on their back with their feet to the foot of a cot in a cot or Moses basket in the same room as their parent or carer for the first 6 months. If you click again, however, we know that babies don't read the rule books, and babies are complicated. We know that family life is complicated, and the way that parents and carers make their decisions is also quite complex. So babies fall asleep in all kinds of different places. So how do we make this advice and this guidance relevant to different families and their situations? So the Lullaby Trust guidance is that they've distilled it right down to the ABC of safer sleep. So babies should always sleep on their back in a clear cot or sleep space. So moving away from just talking about Moses baskets and thinking about sleep spaces generally. So the ABC of safer sleep is something that we use a lot. Next slide, please. So babies should look like this. Parents, families are saturated with images, particularly on social media, of very cute babies, all sort of tucked up, curled up in these beautiful little pictures. And there is a lot of messaging out there, a lot of it very visual, about what looks very cute, what looks very nurturing, and a lot of it is not in adherence to the guidance. So it's sort of recognizing this is what families are being fed a lot all the time around them. Next slide, please. So we've based our risk assessment tool on the assessment framework. So hopefully this looks familiar to a lot of people. So we have the child at the centre and thinking about child factors, which can increase the risk for babies, factors in parenting capacity, which can raise risks, and factors in the family and social environment. And when we come onto the tool, you'll hopefully see this sort of mapped on to the tool that we've developed. Next slide, please. The key message you want to get across is that safer sleeping is everyone's business. And we know from the evidence that families listen to people they trust. And if your agency already has that trusted relationship with a family, actually you may be in a really good position to be having conversations about safer sleep that the families might find very difficult to have with a new professional coming in for the first time, whether that's a health visitor or the first time they're meeting a midwife, to allow families just to be completely open and honest about how they're caring for their baby, the challenges they're facing, so that we can ensure that they've got the information that they need to make things safer. So for every baby, we wanted to encourage people to be having curious conversations, want to be advocating for safer sleep for every sleep, not just at night times. We're aware that out of routine times are a particular window of vulnerability for safe sleep guidance that is being followed to suddenly not be followed. So helping families think ahead and plan ahead for those sorts of situations, whether that's planned and a positive event or whether it's unplanned and potentially a negative event or emergency situation, like, for example, fleeing domestic violence. And consistent messaging is absolutely key. So we want to make sure that everyone is giving the same messages to families. And thinking family, thinking that wider family network, not just the mother, but dad as well, other carers who are around, grandparents, those wider family networks. And all of this around safer sleep needs to be embedded in support for broader family risks and vulnerabilities, because we see these associations of vulnerabilities, particularly in our case learning. So it's really important that it goes alongside breastfeeding promotion and support, things like smoking cessation, housing issues, making sure families got enough space in their house for the baby to have their own safe sleep space. Concern around alcohol use, substance misuse, parental mental health difficulties, and domestic abuse support. So it's part of this wider package of support. Next slide, please. So this tool has been developed to support any practitioner from any agency to have those conversations with families about safer sleeping. So it should have all the information in there. We've tried to put lots in there for background information, tips, tricks, ideas, thoughts for how to start conversations, and documents that you can complete with the family, leave with the family, and things you can give to the family for them to develop their own plans. And really it's about supporting families to make informed choices and plan ahead for safer infant sleeping. Also, using this to recognise and capture those vulnerabilities that might be there in the family, and to help inform the support they might need. This has been a very collaborative piece of work. So we've had lots of representation from different people within health, early help, children's and families wellbeing service, social care. We've had Turning Point involved, and public health as well. And then we've had input and feedback from our families as well, which has been really helpful for us to tweak some of the wording to make sure that what we're doing is really acceptable and accessible for families. On every slide for the rest of the presentation, you will find the web links. So it is on both the City and the County and Rutland Safeguarding Partnership Board web pages. And if you go on to the next slide, please. If you click on either of those links, it will take you to a web page that looks something like this. So this is the county one, the city one is very similar. And it has on there the Safer Sleep Risk Assessment Tool, the full document, which is a 7-page PDF. It also has a single-page PDF, which is the risk assessment based around that assessment triangle. It has a 1-page safer sleeping plan, which is for families to have and complete. It then further down the page has those key safe sleep messages. It's got an embedded animation from the Lullaby Trust that you can sit and watch with families. It's got links to all the Lullaby Trust information in other languages if you're working with a family whose first language isn't English. And then further down the bottom of that page are lots of links for those additional support resources around other vulnerabilities. So that is all there in a kind of one-stop shop of information for practitioners to go to. And as I've said, the links are on every single slide going forwards. So I'm going to hand over to Claire now, who is going to talk through the tool sort of section by section, page by page, and show you what it has.
Thanks very much, Susie. I've only got one screen, so I'm having to call out for the next slide. The next slide is slide 8. Could I have slide 8, Heidi, please?
Is this it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't see what you're sharing. I can only see what I've got, but it's 8 and I'll keep on going. So what Susie has put a lot of work into this, and what she's done is split each of the pages. You can see a miniature of the page over there on the left, page 1, and she's done the top and the bottom so that everybody looking at the slides can see visually what the sort of stuff the practitioners can use to support the families. And Susie and I actually had a chat this morning, and one of the things we were saying is, yes, it's everybody's business, and also those contextualized situations, and the fact that many people in different agencies have been working families with for some time. They may get disclosures, or they may get concerns that, say, a midwife or a health visitor doesn't get. So you know, it is really important that it is everybody's business, and we can make sleep as safe as possible. So that's the top of page 1, and explains the background and the reason why the tool was established. Next slide, please. And at the bottom of page 1, thanks. Have you got a lady looking into a cot? Yes.
Yep.
Looks like a travel cot, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is information to support practitioners. So it goes through the Lullaby Trust, the ABC of safer sleep again, and things for parents and carers to avoid. So you can see there, for example, not using a hot water bottle, and you can see in the cot that you've got there, there's nothing surrounding the baby. The feet are to the bottom of the cot. There's no cot bumpers, no cuddly toys, and no bedding. And I think a lot of parents are now using those sort of sleeping bags that fit with little clips over the shoulders, so there's no loose bedding. Next slide, please. So this is the top of page 2, and it's the Safe Sleeping Risk Assessment tool, and it's babies under 12 months. So the risks of being out of routine, and one of the things that Susie mentioned was maybe suddenly having to leave the household due to domestic violence. In the National Review of Sudden Infant Deaths, particularly where vulnerable families were involved, they found that when families were out of their usual routine for any reason, following safer sleep guidance can be affected and put babies at greater risk. So supporting families to think and plan ahead for those times when they might be out of their usual routine, so they might be staying with a relative or a friend, might help reduce the risk. So sort of talking through that. I don't know if they have to go and stay at their sister's, or they know that it's Christmas time and there might be a party. I work with Susie in CDOP, and some of the cases we've seen, it has been an out of routine situation where things have changed and the baby wasn't in, or the young baby wasn't in their usual place of sleeping. It's worth noting in terms of safer sleep and the law that people need to be aware. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily talk about this to everybody, but there is a risk of criminal prosecution for families in certain circumstances. So if someone shares a sleep space with a child while they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol and causes the death of that child, they could be liable to criminal prosecution. So obviously that could involve where you're being told that a partner or the person themselves maybe, you know, has a drink every night or whatever and is sleeping with the baby. Next slide, please. So now that's the bottom of page 2. So the information on here is local learning from our own Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland's child death reviews, and about the associated risk factors that we've identified locally. So obviously the cases are small, but every case is an absolute tragedy. But when we're looking at Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland from 2018 to 2022, it was co-sleeping with an adult in a chair or a sofa, babies that were preterm more than 3 weeks early or before 37 weeks gestation, low birth weight babies, the parents smoking, sharing the sleep space with an adult who'd been under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Sorry, is somebody wanting to say something? I just got a bit background noise, but do shout up if I need to. Yeah. Crowded or cluttered housing, and previous or current domestic abuse, and families being out of their usual routine, which we've just mentioned. So it is useful for you to know what our local issues are. Next slide, please. So this is the top of page 3, and it's the Safer Sleep Risk Assessment, and it's available on the web page to print out as a single page, so that you can sit with the families and do that with them and leave a copy for the family, and also keep a copy yourself. So we're back to the assessment triangle with the parenting capacity of the child and the environment. And it's a way of capturing vulnerabilities and identifying issues that families might need support with. So the tool should help identify risks and having a discussion about how to reduce the risks. What it doesn't mean is that the more boxes that are ticked, the more likely it is that that baby's going to come to harm. That's not the idea. It's the idea to talk about the risks. It's not saying, well, if you've got 7 of these, then your baby's more at risk. But we do know that there are overlapping vulnerabilities. The risks are small. This is about making it as safe a sleep as possible, and looking at what can be done and what can be adapted, and contextualizing what you're doing. Okay. Next slide, please.
Sorry, it's not moving again. Hang on. It seems to
Mine isn't moving either, so that's
it's
fun,
gone. It's gone. It's gone.
It's gone through.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you can see at the bottom of page 3 and the top where all the boxes were is miniaturized there, that actually you do that with the parent and you talk about the risks that you've identified and what actions. So you've got the discussion on the left there, and then the actions on the right hand side, and then what actions you've agreed when you've completed it, and the actions that the practitioner might be doing. It could be a referral for further support, you know, smoking cessation, something like that. And then when you're going to review review the process as well, because it's not static, something could be moving. So then there's a remember down there about keeping a copy. Okay, next slide, please. Is that all right if you've got the top of page 4? Is that all right, Heidi?
Yep, it's on. Yep.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So the next page is for after the risk assessment has been completed and the risks have been identified, with suggested next steps, including checking the family knowledge and their understanding of the safer sleep guidance, and ensuring that the family have information in their first language. So that's links to the Lullaby Trust resources. You know, there's the simple versions as well, and considering other resources and services that might support the family. And, you know, it could be that, you know, as a practitioner, you're very concerned about what you've seen, or you're concerned about some of the things that you've heard, or maybe a carer that's looking after the baby, escalating any of those concerns, including links to the neglect toolkit. Next slide, please.
Yep, it's there.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you very much. So this is a list of the additional resources shown here. And firstly, those are a lot of the Lullaby Trust sources there. And they're also available on the web page. So what we're trying to do is maximise access to all of these resources and maximise those to the families that you work with. So you can see we've got our local substance misuse service, we've got smoking cessation, domestic abuse, as well as all the Lullaby Trust resources and the videos and the easy read card. Next slide, please.
Yep, so
thank you very much. So now we're on the top of page 5. So again, it's information to support practitioners, and it's about starting those conversations. I'm sure that everybody is very skilled with these sorts of conversations, but sometimes when it comes to safe sleep and sensitive issues, it's quite nice to have a few things you know, in your toolbox, really, to be able to talk about. So, for example, who else looks after your baby? Do they know about safer sleeping advice and how to keep the baby safe? And we do know that it takes time for information to filter through, and maybe there's a dominant matriarch in the family, or even a patriarch or a sister that has different views and says, oh, this is what I did and I was fine. So it's about saying, you know, what the latest evidence is and how you might be able to put that across, or whether it's the best decision to use certain people to look after your baby. Do you feel that person's safe? Do you feel that they understand what it is that you're saying? And it's just starters and questions, just to open up those discussions and prompt some planning and prompt them to consider how they might plan to make things safer. So going to a friend's for a drink, using a babysitter, you know, where do babies go to sleep, where do they wake up, that kind of thing. Next slide, please.
That's up.
Thank you. So at the bottom of the page, it's more information to support practitioners, chat tips, Lullaby Trust animations and the easy read card, and planning the next conversations. And then there's the safer sleep plan. So there's quite a lot there. Questions to start a conversation. If I'm cuddling my baby and I feel tired, do I have a safe place ready to put them down? So those are quite nice. They're quite gentle questions. If I have to leave home in a hurry. So the practitioner that's working with the family may well know that there's a history of domestic abuse, or may know that the housing isn't that stable. So you'll kind of start conversations depending on the circumstances that you're working with. But I think those are hopefully helpful. And as we've said, parents and carers have been involved in the development of this tool. So hopefully the language is accessible for people. Slide 18, the next slide, please.
Yep.
Thank you. So here's the baby's safe sleep plan with the baby's name and the parent carer name. So it's the document for the families to keep. So they have for them to complete with you, and it reminds them what's to be done to make the sleep time safer, and key reminders about sharing sleep space. So things I can do to make my sleep time safer at every sleep. the wording there, again, it's been spoken to with carers and families. A lot of people, you know, do like toys and all the rest of it, but there it's saying loose bedding. It talks about not sleeping in a chair or a sofa, and then sharing a sleep space. So we're trying to be realistic. Some people will sleep with their baby, and it's looking at reducing the risks and making it as safe as possible. You're not going to get everybody, and nobody would want to enforce people to do anything. And it's having those open conversations and not making people feel that they're being judged, or being dictated to, if you like, but you're actually having those conversations and explaining the reasons, because I think we all would agree that everybody really wants the best for their babies. Most people want the best for their babies. Okay, next slide, please.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So at the bottom of the page, there's space for the families to jot down their own individual thoughts, ideas and plans, particularly thinking ahead for times when they might be out of their usual routine or if their baby won't settle. So again, it's prompting the families to think who else might look after the baby and who they might need to share the plan with. And if you look down bottom right hand corner there, there's a QR code which links to the Health for Under Fives website and to Crisis, managing the babies crying, and other resources. And because I always promote ICON, which is to reduce abusive head trauma in babies triggered by crying, then I know that on the Under Fives website there's links to ICON and the resources in ICON as well. So it's looking at the individual child and that individual parent or carer working out how they would do things and what supports they might need. Next slide, please. So we've still got the links there, thanks Heidi, and we've got the working group and everybody named in the working group, and so many people have worked to bring this together. So we're acknowledging Nottingham and Nottinghamshire because the tool is based on them and then developed for our local area, and all the parent groups who reviewed and gave feedback on the tool, etc. And the final slide, please. So this is the list of resources and where to find out more information. So the Lullaby Trust, which we've mentioned before, the sleep advice, alcohol consumption and supervision. So the Who in Charge videos. So these are really good videos. I think the Who's in Charge was developed in Birmingham. Yes, I can see it's Birmingham community. They're really good. They're really accessible. And it's looking at what can happen when parents may be drinking and it's not clear who's in charge of the children. Children are wandering off and things. The Lift the Baby is very good. I mean, we're doing an ICON video here in Leicester and Rutland, but this Lift the Baby is very health orientated, as in it's promoting the baby is a rugby ball. I'm not doing this very well. What I would advise is they're short and sharp, and they're actually very much involving men. So this one from Berkshire has got the baby as a rugby ball and men moving this baby around. So I think it's a good way of getting a message across that's quite accessible, and it's hopefully sort of targeted a bit more at men there. And then there's the NICE guidance. There's support for getting baby equipment. So again, looking at a sleep space, there may be a need to get some equipment. I mean, hopefully antenatally rather than postnatally, and then a link to the safeguarding procedures. So thank you for looking at this presentation. Hopefully that's going to be shared with your agency. There are also going to be, if you're interested in linking more with this particular subject, can you send your email to the board office? There are going to be bi-monthly sessions where people can ask questions, because we want to disseminate this information as far as we possibly can.